After finding out our spot was available a few days early in Tampa, we get the heck out of Dodge and head for warmer weather and amazing views.
And it's time to go, guys. It was 45 degrees when we got up this morning. So this is what we left the other place early for.
I think it was a good decision.
Yeah, it's a pretty good decision.
Thanks for joining us this week as Jeremy and I have an in-depth discussion on the pros and cons of establishing residency in Florida, South Dakota, and Texas. And we share why we chose not to go with Florida.
And the only reason we were here was to establish residency, which we are not going to do in Florida.
For all of you Wicket fans, he shows off his polite begging skills when Jeremy gets out the peanut butter.
And I don't know how Wicket does it, but I'm pretty sure he knew that I was getting the peanut butter out before I knew I was getting the peanut butter out. It's underway day. You can see Candace is bringing in the kitchen slide here. And it's time to go, guys. It was 45 degrees when we got up this morning. And I know that's not super cold, but that's as cold as we want to go this winter. So it is time to head further south, for crying out loud. We're headed a little bit more south today. Not quite as far south as we want to be, but we're headed south and then ultimately going to end up in Tampa. We need to get out of this cold weather. And we're leaving just in time because they're supposed to have, I think, 3 or 4 nights where it's in the mid to upper 30s. And that is not where we want to be. All right, sorry if it's a little windy or noisy here, but I wanted to show something that I found in this park that we just got into. So it's got one of these, I think this is just an automatic regulator. So number one, I never trust anybody's regulator except mine. So I'm gonna go ahead and use mine, but I wanted to show you the problem with this. I've never seen this before, but this is something to keep an eye out for. So I don't know if I'll be able to get a shot of it here, but this has got a little plastic piece that sticks out here, and it's pretty much flush. But here's the problem I have with this is my regulator, and it's got this little screen on it, right, to keep anything bad from getting in there. If I were to just put this on there, that would poke a hole in this screen, or at least damage it, and I don't want to damage my screen. So I'm just going to take this off because I use a water filtration system anyway. I think there's another little screen in here before it gets to the regulator. So I'm just going to take this off while we're here because I'm not going to poke a hole in that screen. So anyway, just something to keep an eye out for. You don't want to ruin the screen on your regulator. So anyway, just something I've never seen before, so I figured I'd share it.
A few moments later.
I'm going to let you just decide for yourselves whether or not you think I was smart enough to replace the screen with an O-ring before I hooked everything up and turned the water on and got blasted with spray that leaked out around that connection. Okay, it's snack time, and I've got some banana slices with peanut butter on them. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know that I was having these when I walked in the kitchen. I walked in the kitchen because I was bored, which I know is not a good thing. But regardless, it ended up with banana slices and peanut butter. And I don't know how Wicket does it, but I'm pretty sure he knew that I was getting the peanut butter out before I knew I was getting the peanut butter out. Every time without fail, he's in here when there's any chance that the peanut butter is going to be taken out. So I don't know if he's going to get any, but he is definitely down here waiting patiently and probably drooling all over the floor. What do you think, buddy? You want some peanut butter and banana? Yeah? Is that good stuff? Did you even taste it? It's all gone. What's going on?
We are packing up early because we found out that our spot in Tampa is open early. So since there's really nothing to do around here and we didn't end up doing what we thought we were going to do, we're going to head down to Tampa early.
Not to mention, this park's not very nice.
Yeah.
And the only reason we were here was to establish residency, which we are not going to do in Florida. We're not going to get into that at this moment. But Candace will give you an update later on why we are not doing that.
Yep.
Long story short, there's no benefit, but we'll explain more later.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, this is an okay park. It's $168 a week if you're an Escapees member, which is great. But the grass is full of these little sticker burr things that get in your shoelaces and all over the dog. The roads are pothole city. So
the roads are, actually, in my opinion, they're a little bit dangerous to even walk on around here.
Yeah, especially considering that Escapees tends to cater to like an older crowd.
Yeah.
And yeah, you really have to watch where you're walking because there are some good potholes.
So she said, what'd you say, 168 a week, something like that. So it's a 168 a week park, guys. Plus, we're right across the street from a road that leads straight to like a quarry or something.
Like
There's dump trucks going by all day long, mashing on their gas. And they start this at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
so,
and it's just constant.
Yeah, so...
But this park does have propane, and they sell it for like, you got it for what, right under $3 a gallon?
Yeah, they actually lose money on it. Escapees considers it a service to their members and their guests. So yeah, the propane was really good here. I think it was right at about $3. So,
and they do have some activities. We're getting into the winter season, so they might have more for the snowbirds and stuff. But I mean,
it's just not for us.
Yeah.
It's just not for us. There was only one reason we came here. That reason didn't pan out. So we're going to move on. We're actually leaving a few days early here. I think 3 days early. We're going to check into our new site 3 days early, where it should be a much nicer park. There are a lot more things to do. I've actually got some family down there right now. My uncle and his girlfriend are down there. So we're just kind of wasting some time here. So we're going to hit the road today.
Yep. On today's episode of Would You Rather? Would you rather take a year-long backpacking trip around the world or a month-long stay at a luxury resort?
I mean, I guess that depends on where I'm going around the world, what I'm going to see, what I'm going to do. Do I have everything I need? Are funds an issue?
Money's no issue.
Money's no issue.
Yep.
I probably have to go with backpacking around the world, though. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of places in the world to see.
Australia, New Zealand, the pyramids of Egypt.
Yeah, I just have to stay out of all those places where everything's trying to kill you, like in Australia.
Spiders as big as your hand.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep, kangaroos that are built like, Chuck Norris.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree because there's so much to see in the world, but spending a month at a luxury resort, all inclusive.
Yeah.
Not have to worry about anything.
That's true, but I think it would get boring staying in that one spot for a month.
Yeah, you'd have to do lots of off-resort excursions.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, second one. Would you rather lose your sense of touch or lose your sense of taste? So you can't feel anything or you can't taste anything.
I think I'd have to go with lose my sense of taste. I mean, you can live with that. I mean, you can live without your sense of touch too, but kind of. I mean, that would be really hard. You would know when you get hurt, if you cut yourself or...
how much pressure?
Yeah, I'd have to keep the sense of touch.
Well, would you rather be blind or deaf?
Deaf.
Deaf?
Yeah. I think I'd have a hard time if I couldn't see.
True.
I'd almost feel claustrophobic if I couldn't see.
Yeah.
That's what I think anyway.
And I'd be screwed because I'd lose my driver.
That's right.
And
you know what? If I lose my hearing, I can never hear you anyway, so...
You're already losing your hearing. All right. So this isn't a would you rather, but it's a joke. So, What has a bottom at the top?
I don't know.
A pair of pants.
Oh, boy.
Yucca, 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 yucca.
All right, go ahead. Get in.
Oh,
Whoa. Yeah.
I would not swim in it.
No, I'm not even gonna stand in it.
Actually, it kind of feels good. I'm a little
Maybe.
hot right
Hot. So this is what we left the other place early for.
now. I think it was a good decision.
Yeah, it's a pretty good decision. So we're in Tampa. We're at MacDill Air Force Base. This is where we landed. And
Which is huge.
yeah, it's pretty big. It's pretty significant base.
Yeah.
And we'll be here for a whole month. We're not, well, actually a little bit over a month.
Yeah.
We're not leaving until after the first of the year.
Yep.
So this is definitely an upgrade from where we were, and it's really not any more expensive.
No.
So
No, it's the same price if you break it down weekly.
yeah,
And
and they didn't even charge us the few extra days.
yeah, I was able
Good.
to walk this morning. I didn't have to watch my feet. There's no potholes in the road.
Yeah, we still got little sticky things in the grass, but yeah, there's a lot more to do here. You know, there's 2 golf courses on the base, so there'll be a little bit of that going on, and plenty of places to ride and walk.
Yeah.
You know, got obviously the commissary and the exchange right on the base, so huge upgrade. And the liquor
Yeah.
store's cheap.
Yeah. They've got almost nightly activities at this building. We're not sure if it's an activity center or a restaurant or what, but we're like the closest site to it, so that's
Yeah.
convenient.
We're the closest site to the beach here, so pan around this way. So we're basically just right over here, maybe 200 yards in that direction, away from the beach. So it's not as close as I thought it was going to be to the beach, but it's still pretty close enough. I mean, it takes 2 minutes to walk over here.
Yeah.
So anyway, just a big upgrade from where we were. Pretty happy that we came down early. We were doing nothing there.
Yeah, so we could do nothing here.
Yeah, well, at least it's nicer place to do nothing.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so earlier in the video, I mentioned that we were not gonna establish residency here in Florida. And we have a couple of different reasons for that, but we wanted to share this information with you guys because we know there are a lot of full-time RVers out there who want to establish residency in Florida because it does have some benefits. So we're gonna talk through all of that as it applies to our situation. So what we're gonna talk about here is we're gonna talk about specific numbers for what we found for how much it's gonna cost to basically go from being Indiana residents to Florida residents. And specifically, we're gonna talk about insurance costs and registration fees for both the RV and the tow vehicle or your towed. And then once we're done with that, then we'll talk about why we decided that it just wasn't for us to establish residency down here. And then, as kind of a bonus, we're going to talk about a couple of different states. So many full-time RVers like to establish residency in Florida, Texas, and South Dakota. One of those 3 because they all have really good benefits. One benefit is no state taxes. The other benefit is it's easy to establish and maintain your residency there very, very quickly. So we'll talk about just kind of briefly those states as well, and we'll compare some numbers. Candace has done a lot of research, so we'll compare some numbers between those 3 states, and in our specific case, we're going to compare all of that to Indiana because that's where we're currently residents. So having said all of that, we're gonna turn this over to Candace and let her start talking about the numbers.
So, like you said, I did a lot of research, did a lot of comparisons. We actually had all of our figures from Indiana. So, if we're going to do a side-by-side comparison for Florida, because I did go ahead and do a quote with both our truck insurance company and our RV insurance company. So I've got actual figures for that. So that boils down to our truck insurance in Indiana is currently $930 a year. Florida, however, was going to be $2244. So that's over what, 2.5 times, I think we figured?
Yeah, almost 2.5 times.
What the?
I've said it a couple of times since we've been down here. Whatever is the cause of that down here in Florida, whatever the crazy driver situation is down here, it ain't working.
Yeah, so that was a huge shocker. The RV insurance went up as well, not quite as much, but we paid $942 in Indiana, and it would have gone up to $1,456 here in Florida, which, again, it's not as bad, but it's still like a 50%.
What the?
It's a significant increase. It's a $500 a year. That's a lot.
Kind of the main reason why we kind of chose Florida was that Florida does not charge a yearly, essentially like an excise tax, whereas Indiana does. So in Indiana, to register the truck this next year, we're looking at $361 because they base it off of the current fair market value. Whereas in Florida, it's just $110 a year. It's slightly higher your first year, but after that, it's about $110. The RV registration, however, we would be looking at, for next year, $1,450 to register in Indiana, compared to $27 in Florida. But that still leaves Florida higher because of those increased insurance rates. So we're looking at, for next year, $3,683 in Indiana and $3,837 in Florida.
Now, the big difference here between those two states is generally the value of both of our vehicles are going to go down, which means the amount that's actually taxed is going to go down as well. Whereas insurance costs, when was the last time any of you guys heard of insurance costs going down just because they felt like, reducing your insurance costs? That doesn't happen. So you've got one cost going down and the other going up. So over time, that spread's going to get bigger.
Yes. Yeah. So, like he was saying, next year it would only be a $154 difference between Indiana and Florida, but each subsequent year that gap would get bigger and bigger.
So you may be saying to yourself, well, that $154, stretched that out over a year, that's not much, right? So admittedly, that's not a big number, but there's more to this. For us, in our situation, there's more to it than that, and we're going to get to that here in just a few minutes. But there are some additional costs that go along with this, so what are those? So
they're not so much additional costs, but they would be part of that $3,837 that I mentioned. $1,358 of that would have been for us upfront costs. So registration fees right off the bat, $252. And because we pay our RV insurance in full, we just pay the whole year in advance, we would have been immediately hit with about $1,100. So the $1,100 for that plus the $252 on registration, we were immediately looking at $1,300 out of pocket.
Right, so that's just upfront cost right there. So she kind of initially rolled it into the annual cost, but that's a boatload of cash you got to come up with, right away.
So just to recap those numbers, we were looking at $3,683 for Indiana compared to $3,837 for Florida, for a $154 annual difference, which...
Right, like I said before, that's not a huge deal. You spread that over 12 months. It's kind of chump change when you're talking about a whole year, right? But again, our situation, we also wanted to take into account our income and where and how much that income is taxed. So for us right now, as it stands, we basically have two main sources of income. And the first one is my pension from the military, and the second one is my VA benefits. So Indiana currently doesn't tax my pension from the military, so no money is taken out of that. That's all ours. And then nobody taxes the VA benefits. That's a non-taxable amount of money that we get every single month. So in the grand scheme of things, my pension and my VA benefits account for well over 95% of our income. So essentially, just almost none of our income is taxed right now.
Yes.
And so that was one of the reasons that we wanted to get into one of these states, was that there's no state income tax. Obviously, we know we're not being taxed in Indiana, but this was for a long-term benefit. So because there are basically no tax benefits to us at this time, we decided there was no benefit to becoming Florida residents, because we had to fork out, you know, a boatload of cash up front to become residents, and then our annual, you know, costs are going to be a little bit higher, probably negligible in the long run. But why fork out a whole bunch of money to become residents in a state right now that doesn't benefit us at all?
Plus, you know how it is when you're registering vehicles, you're getting driver's licenses, you're switching insurance. That's a lot of work. And
yeah, this process, and you know, we had talked about going through that process in detail, but we don't want to take up a whole bunch of time with that. But it was a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of paperwork, a lot of going to notary and going and getting stuff printed out, because we don't have a quality printer here. So it was a lot of hoops to jump through. So, so again, it's not a big number when you're talking about 12 months. I get it, but for us, it doesn't make sense right now to fork out all of the upfront money to do that with no benefits. However, coming this spring, and I've mentioned it on the channel before, this spring we're going to be in Athens, Texas for about 6-7 weeks. And a lot of you guys know that's where the NRVTA school is. So I'm going to be going through the advanced tech course and the inspector course. And out of that, in some way, we will form a business to either do inspections or, you know, some basic tech services, or maybe a little bit of both. We'll see. So the point here is that, again, right now, it doesn't make sense to do, because it's just money out of our pocket we don't need to spend. This time next year, once I've been through that school, we start the new business and we have some income coming in from that. I think what we are going to need to do is we're going to have to take a look back on the rest of that year, so 2025, and from that see if we can gauge what 2026 is going to look like from that business standpoint of the inspector and the technician, and see how much income we think we're gonna bring in from that business. And then I think this time next year, once we have looked at all those numbers and some projections, then we're gonna have to make a decision again on, do we change our residency status based on how much income we're going to bring in, or we want to bring in, versus how much we're going to save in, you know, taxes because of that business. So, long story short, I know that's too late. This time next year, we're going to have to decide all of this all over again. And again, I think all 3 states are going to be back in play, because here's the thing: we missed an opportunity here.
We did.
With South Dakota.
And I'm going to stop you there, because I don't think Florida is still in play. I kind of think we're down to 2 states.
Well, I think so too, actually. I think it's going to be between Texas and South Dakota. So where we missed the boat here with South Dakota is we kind of misinterpreted or misunderstood how much money we were going to pay to have to register this RV in that state, considering that we had already just registered it in Indiana and spent 2 boatloads of money doing that, because that was super expensive to register this thing in Indiana. So I'm going to let her go over the numbers for South Dakota first, and then we'll talk about where we kind of screwed up that process.
Okay, so the South Dakota numbers, at least regarding the insurance rates, these are best guesstimates based on some research I did just comparing states in general. So I compared Indiana to Florida, got kind of that figure. So South Dakota, we'd be looking at $1,209 a year for the truck insurance compared to the $930 for Indiana. So it does go up a little bit. $1,226 for the RV compared to the $942. So again, it goes up, but not as much as Florida. But the big savings are in the registration fees. So the truck would only be $130 and the rig would be $360. So that brings our total for South Dakota to $2,925 for next year, which would be a $758 savings over Indiana.
And how much over Florida?
Close to $1,000.
Now, where we messed up. So when we were doing our research on South Dakota, it says that when you register your vehicle, you pay a one-time excise tax
Yes.
on the value of the vehicle.
Purchase price.
Purchase price of the vehicle.
Yes.
So if you purchase a vehicle, let's just, easy numbers, $100,000. If this rig costs us $100,000, it's a 4% excise tax. We're going to pay 4%.
Yes.
Now, we were not thinking, I will be the first to admit that I feel a little bit dumb about this, because we were thinking down the lines of, we had just registered this RV in Indiana, and we paid something like $8,000 and something total between the registration fee, the sales tax, and all of that. So I just forked out over $8,000 for that, and I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go to South Dakota and then turn around and spend another 4% of that total to register it again there.
Double taxation.
Not how that works, right? We didn't really think through that, so we did a little bit more research, and in fact, if we do register the RV and the truck in South Dakota, but specifically for the RV, because we've already paid the sales tax on this, we don't pay we wouldn't pay that number again in South Dakota. So basically what they say is, so their tax rate is 4%. So if you already paid your taxes in a different state and it was more than 4%, then you don't pay anything.
It's reciprocity.
Right. So if you paid less than that 4%, then you have to make up the difference.
Yeah.
So again, I feel dumb about this. This just occurred to us literally as we're making this video. And we felt really dumb because we were in Indiana, and South Dakota is really easy to establish residency. Like literally we could have driven from Indiana to South Dakota and stayed a night in a hotel one night and become South Dakota residents. We could have got our driver's license up there, and we could have registered both vehicles while we were there, because South Dakota doesn't have to do a VIN check or any kind of inspection on the RV. So you don't even need your RV with you.
Correct.
So we missed the boat on that. Again, feel pretty dumb about that, but stuff happens and you miss things. So, all right, so that was South Dakota. The other option, though, is Texas.
All right, so Texas, again, this is based on just kind of comparing some general rates. Texas is also going to be a little bit higher than Indiana's first insurance, but it's lower than South Dakota. So Texas we'd be looking at just over $1,100 for the truck, $1,130 for the RV, $54 for the truck registration. So that's the best of everybody. And then they charge $205 for the RV. So that brings Texas's total to $2,505, which is an $1,178 savings over Indiana.
So anyway, in our case, it didn't work out. We talked about the different states here, and again, I think Florida's out. I think South Dakota's in our future. But again, we'll have to sit down and figure this out again next year, and we'll go through this whole process, and then we'll probably give you guys another update about it at that point. But we really did feel like there are some people out there that are in our same situation where very little of their income is taxed, period.
Yeah.
So coming to a state with no state taxes, it really just negates that reason, period.
Yeah.
So for us, we're just going to keep on keeping on with Indiana residency.
And another reason for South Dakota and Texas is, based on what we've seen so far, we really like the western portion of the country, so we're going to be there.
We're going to be out there anyway. Okay, so with that, we're going to wrap this up. That's going to be it for this week, this video. Hope you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and then while you're down there, make sure you hit the bell button to get notified of all of our future videos when they drop. And with that,
Happy camping and stay safe out there.